We're in the middle of nowhere. A lot of folks are telling me they're just abandoned out here. I struggle to see how this is different from apartheid. This is a relocation camp in South Africa, about 30 kilometers outside central Cape Town. You're just seeing crushing poverty here. It's a supposedly temporary settlement where some of the country's poorest people have been dumped after the local government evicted them and demolished their homes.
They promised us here that we were only going to stay here like for a year or so. 10 years, nothing's happening.
I don't want to stay for my rest of my life here.
It's called Wolwerivier. It has no schools or hospitals, no public transport, and almost no way for residents to make a living.
No one knows about this place.
Under apartheid, millions of black South Africans were subjected to forced removals, along with hundreds of thousands of colored and Indian people. Today, many people say that little has changed.
For me, it feels like apartheid is not over yet.
Wolwerivier is not an isolated case. People who can't afford rent are being evicted and abandoned in relocation camps all over South Africa.
Yeah, we've been dumped here.
Been dumped here.
Hi, I'm Yara, and I'm in South Africa to unpack how forced removals are still happening even 3 decades after the apartheid regime ended, and how South African authorities are using legal loopholes to get away with it. Hello, how's it going? Do you want to talk to us? I've come to Wolwerivier to meet some of the folks living out here. Thank you for letting us into your home. Oh, you have the Turkish soaps. You watch Turkish soaps?
Yes.
My mom watches them too. Wolwerivier was built by the Cape Town government in 2015 as a place to relocate people they evicted from informal housing, the kind of shack houses you see all over South Africa.
My name is Frank Peterson.
Frank has lived here since the very start, after the Cape Town government removed his family from their home.
We were staying near the dump site.
They basically demolished your informal settlement so they could expand the dump site.
The city moved us from there to here.
When folks were first moved here, they were told it was temporary. But a decade later, it's become permanent, with hundreds of single-room units made of concrete and sheet metal.
We got now running water, electricity inside the houses, and we got toilets. There's a population of 7,000 people and 600,000. Overcrowded population here. The closest school is 15 kilometers.
You can't even do grocery shopping.
And there's no public buses or trains into town either, only expensive private taxis, which means
Having a transport, you basically buy.
Do you guys have jobs?
No, we don't have jobs.
Most of the people doesn't work. There's no work because we're far from the city.
It's not like we are lazy. Now, if you can go in door by door, you're gonna get people who can do everything.
But there's no jobs.
There is no jobs.
We live in poverty every day.
Wolwerivier is a dumping site for humans.
There are a number of other temporary housing sites all over South Africa, where people have been dumped after being evicted by the local authorities. This is all part of a wider trend in the country. Folks who can't afford rent are stuck in unstable and unsafe living conditions, like the more than 5 million people who live in informal housing, who are also at constant risk of eviction. So how did all this happen? To find out, I met up with Indafuna Ukwazi, one of South Africa's leading housing rights advocacy organizations.
What happens with our eviction system is that you can't be evicted into homelessness. Our constitution specifically mandates the state to provide access to adequate housing. But the state's focus and resources have actually gone into temporary solutions.
So when Wolwerivier was built, it was officially a temporary relocation area. And because it was only temporary, the law said it could be built to much lower standards. A city official even acknowledged that Wolwerivier's temporary status was just a way to get the funding to build it. And while the city talked about plans to actually develop and invest in Wolwerivier, it pretty quickly abandoned them.
That is why you are finding communities like the Wolwerivier community in an eternal limbo in this temporary accommodation.
And this is still happening across South Africa, people being evicted into so-called temporary accommodation. In fact, Cape Town authorities are now trying to just give people the materials to make their own temporary housing, but without any designated land to build it on.
People are shipped off into these temporary setups, which invariably become their permanent abode. That has been the story and the life of most South Africans. Our history is marked by dispossession. That legacy is the roots of our current issue.
Under apartheid, the white minority government forcibly displaced around 3.5 million black South Africans into rural areas, called Bantustans, where they were denied access to resources and forced to live in poverty. This is kind of apartheid in a different name. Now it's
economic
Economic apartheid. So what happens next? Well, it's already kind of spelled out in the law.
Our constitution explicitly mandates redress for the wrongs of the past, even though there has been a very conscious undoing of the legislative pillars that propped up that regime. There hasn't necessarily been a redistribution of the resources that were taken.
Instead of redistribution, the post-apartheid government leaned into neoliberal free market economics, which some analysts say has embedded inequality in South African society.
Cape Town's housing market is predominantly servicing the luxury property market. 76% or so of Cape Town's population can't afford to access or purchase their first house.
And this is the excuse the Cape Town government makes, that it's too expensive to build housing for evictees in the city center.
One of the key tenets of spatial justice is being close enough to access things like opportunity, like education. Until the state actually prioritizes the proper provision of well-located and affordable housing, we will keep seeing this problem continue. South Africans need a stake in their own country, and we can't sit by and watch it being sold off to the highest bidder.